The rain hadn't stopped since the moment I arrived at Blackthorn Manor. It ran in rivers down the stone walls, trickling into every crack and crevice as if trying to drown the house from the inside out. I stared out at the gray, fog-choked hills beyond the windows, wondering what in the world had made me come here. But I knew the answer. It wasn't just some impulse trip to the English countryside. I'd inherited this place, Blackthorn Manor, along with everything inside it from my late mother, and I'd come all the way from America, hoping to find some kind of connection to the old stories my family whispered about the Langley women. I thought it would be an adventure, a mystery to unravel, but standing in that dim hallway, listening to the clock ticking softly against the silence, all I felt was unease. The housekeeper, Mrs. Abernathy, shuffled past me with a cautious glance over her shoulder. "Careful with the east wing," she murmured. "Best leave some doors closed." Her words sent a chill down my spine, but I managed a polite nod, slipping my hand into the pocket of my coat. My fingers brushed the cold silver of the chatelaine, a family heirloom my mother had given me as a birthday gift a few years ago. It was more than a keepsake. It was a piece of history I had carried across the sea, a legacy I had unknowingly returned home. The chatelaine had once belonged to Margaret Langley, my great-great-grandmother, mistress of the manor in the mid-1800s. It felt heavier than it should, as though it carried more than mere objects, perhaps the weight of old secrets. In the weak light, the tools suspended from its chain gleamed faintly: a delicate sewing knife, a small glass vial, a slim notepad case, and several intricate keys. One key, larger and more ornate than the rest, stood out cold and waiting, as if it held the power to unlock more than just doors. I could almost hear the soft jingle they made when Margaret wore the chatelaine on her belt, walking through these very halls. It was said that the keys could unlock every door in the house, and perhaps, I thought, every secret too. That night, the house seemed to breathe. It creaked and groaned as the wind battered its ancient walls. Shadows huddled in the corners, and each door I passed on my way to bed felt like it was waiting for me to stop and use the keys. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was awake in this place, just out of sight, something that had been waiting for me. After tossing and turning for hours, I finally slipped into an uneasy sleep. That's when I saw her. In my dream, a woman stood at the far end of a long corridor. She wore a high-collared black dress that hugged her thin frame, and at her waist gleamed the chatelaine, its silver tools swaying softly with each step she took. She was facing away from me, her posture rigid, but even from behind I could sense a cold power emanating from her. I knew it was Margaret Langley. She turned slowly, and I caught my breath. Her face was pale, with streaks of silver running through her dark hair. Her lips curled into a small, knowing smile, but there was something wrong with it, something unnatural. And then she spoke, though her lips never moved. "It's time to open the doors, child." I woke with a start, the air icy against my skin. The fire in the hearth had burned low, and the room was so still it felt like time had stopped. The chatelaine lay on the bedside table, and my heart skipped a beat when I saw it. The largest key had come loose from the chain. It rested beside the chatelaine as if waiting for me to pick it up. Without thinking, I did. The metal felt unnaturally cold, and as soon as it touched my skin, I felt something stir deep in the pit of my stomach. A pull, as if the key was leading me somewhere. Before I knew what I was doing, I found myself standing outside the east wing. I'd never been down this part of the house, but Mrs. Abernathy's warning echoed in my mind. Best leave some doors closed. Yet here I was with the key in hand. The door at the end of the corridor was unlike any other I'd seen in the manor. Blackened wood reinforced with iron bands. It looked like a door meant to keep something locked away, or someone. I slid the key into the lock, and it turned with a soft click. The door groaned open, and cold air rushed out, carrying the scent of lavender and decay. Inside, the room was simple. a bed, a desk, and a mirror above the fireplace. But then I saw her in the mirror. I froze. Margaret's reflection stared back at me. It wasn't just an image. It was her, alive, aware, and watching me. Her eyes gleamed with something dark, and her lips twisted into that same unnatural smile from my dream. I blinked. My reflection blinked back, but Margaret remained perfectly still, grinning with quiet malice. "Finally," she whispered, "you've come to set me free." I stumbled back, my heart hammering in my chest, but before I could move, the chatelaine in my hand grew heavy, the keys jingling ominously. The largest key burned against my palm, and I cried out in pain, trying to drop it, but it clung to me, as if welded to my skin. Margaret's grin widened. "You don't understand, do you? The chatelaine doesn't just unlock doors, it unlocks curses. It binds this house, and now it binds you." The mirror rippled like the surface of a pond, and before I could scream, her hand shot through the glass, cold fingers wrapping around my wrist. She yanked hard, and suddenly, the room tilted. The world spun, and I felt myself falling through the mirror into a cold, suffocating void. When the spinning stopped, I found myself on the other side of the mirror, staring out into the room I had just been standing in. My reflection, Margaret's reflection, smiled back at me. "No!" I screamed, pounding my fists against the glass, but no sound escaped. The mirror held me fast, cold and silent. Margaret adjusted the chatelaine at her waist, the keys jingling with satisfaction. "Thank you, child," she whispered, smoothing down her black dress. "Enjoy your stay." She turned away from the mirror, leaving me trapped inside. I screamed and screamed, but all I could do was watch as she disappeared into the shadows of Blackthorn Manor, her keys jingling softly. Now I'm here. The days blur together, and I can't tell how much time has passed. Sometimes, when the moonlight hits the mirror just right, I can see the house beyond, the dusty halls, the flickering firelight. And sometimes, if I look closely, I catch a glimpse of her, walking the corridors with the chatelaine jangling at her side. She wears my face now, and she's waiting for the next heir to arrive, waiting for the next prisoner.